Behind the grand walls of Windsor Castle, where centuries of royal secrets sleep in shadows, one missing key would unlock a truth that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. When Queen Camilla stepped into Princess Diana's sealed private chambers on a cold November evening, she had no idea that a single security guard's flashlight would expose not just her presence, but a decades-old mystery that connected her to Diana in ways the world never imagined. What started as a desperate search for answers about her husband's past would become a dangerous game of royal politics, hidden alliances, and shocking revelations. Prince William's confrontation with his stepmother would force both of them to face uncomfortable truths about love, loyalty, and the heavy price of wearing the crown. Some doors are meant to stay locked. Some secrets are too dangerous to uncover. But when family honor collides with royal duty, even the most carefully guarded mysteries must eventually see the light of day. This is the true story of how one missing key changed everything the royal family thought they knew about themselves. The autumn rain drummed against the ancient windows of Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla Parker Bowles walked quietly through the dimly lit corridors of the East Wing. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble floors, each step taking her deeper into a part of the castle she had avoided for years. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 times, its deep tones reverberating through the empty passages like a warning bell. Camilla pulled her navy blue cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she approached the heavy oak door at the end of the corridor. The brass nameplate, tarnished with age but still clearly readable, bore the inscription, Private Chambers, HRH, the Princess of Wales. Even after all these years, seeing Diana's title etched in metal made Camilla's stomach tighten with a mixture of guilt and determination. The door had remained locked since August 1997, sealed by order of Queen Elizabeth herself following Diana's tragic death in Paris. But tonight, Camilla held something in her hand that could change everything. A small, ornate silver key that she had discovered just hours earlier, in the bottom drawer of Charles's private desk. The discovery had been accidental. While searching for Charles's reading glasses in his study, Camilla had pulled too hard on the bottom drawer, causing it to come completely free from its tracks. Behind the drawer, taped to the wooden frame, was a small envelope marked, For C, when you're ready to understand. Inside was the key, and a handwritten note in Charles's familiar script. Some truths can only be found in the places we fear to look. Now, standing before Diana's door, Camilla questioned whether she truly wanted to know what lay beyond it. Charles had been acting strangely for weeks, distant and preoccupied in ways that went beyond his usual royal duties. Their private conversations had become stilted, as if he was holding back something important. When she asked him directly about his mood, he would only say that they were matters from the past that needed to be addressed. The key felt heavy in Camilla's palm, its intricate engravings catching the soft light from the corridor sconces. She had been married to Charles for nearly 2 decades, but Diana's presence still lingered in their relationship like an uninvited ghost. Every public appearance, every royal function, every intimate moment between them was somehow measured against the memory of the woman who had captured the world's heart. Camilla inserted the key into the lock with trembling fingers. The mechanism turned with surprising ease, as if it had been recently maintained. The door swung open silently, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating furniture covered in white sheets like sleeping specters. The air inside smelled of lavender and old roses, Diana's signature scent still lingering after all these years. Camilla stepped across the threshold, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it could be heard throughout the castle. She reached for the light switch but hesitated, as if turning on the lights would somehow make her intrusion more real, more irreversible. When the room finally flooded with warm yellow light, Camilla gasped. The space was exactly as Diana had left it, not because it had been preserved as a shrine, but because someone had been maintaining it. Fresh flowers sat in crystal vases on the windowsill, their petals still dewy. Recent magazines lay opened on the coffee table, and a cup of tea, still warm to the touch, sat on the ornate writing desk. Someone had been living in these rooms. Someone had been keeping Diana's private sanctuary exactly as it was, not as a memorial, but as a functioning living space. The realization sent chills down Camilla's spine. Who had access to this locked room? Who had been coming here regularly enough to maintain it so carefully? She moved deeper into the sitting room, her eyes scanning every detail. The walls were covered with photographs, but not the formal royal portraits that decorated the rest of the castle. These were personal pictures. Diana with her sons as babies, candid shots of royal family gatherings, and images that Camilla had never seen before. In one particularly striking photograph, a young Charles and Diana stood together in a garden. But they weren't alone. A third figure, partially obscured by shadow, stood just behind them. Camilla picked up the photograph for a closer look, squinting at the mysterious third person. Before she could make out any details, a sound from the adjoining bedroom made her freeze. It was soft but unmistakable, the sound of someone moving around, opening drawers and rustling papers. Her first instinct was to flee, to lock the door behind her and pretend she had never been there. But something stronger than fear kept her rooted in place. She had come here seeking answers about Charles's recent behavior, about the secrets he seemed to be keeping. Whatever was happening in the next room might hold those answers. Camilla moved toward the bedroom door, which stood slightly ajar. She could see a thin strip of light beneath it, suggesting someone was inside with a lamp or flashlight. The sounds continued, methodical, purposeful, as if whoever was inside knew exactly what they were looking for. She pressed herself against the wall beside the doorframe and peered through the narrow gap. A figure dressed in dark clothing was kneeling beside Diana's writing desk, carefully going through papers and documents. The person moved with familiarity, as if they had done this many times before. From her limited vantage point, Camilla could only see that it was a woman with graying hair pulled back in a simple bun. The woman stood up suddenly, and Camilla caught a glimpse of her profile in the lamplight. The face was familiar, but it took a moment for recognition to dawn. It was Mrs. Elizabeth Hartwell, Diana's former personal secretary, who had supposedly retired to Scotland immediately after the princess's death. Yet here she was, 27 years later, going through Diana's private papers in the middle of the night. Mrs. Hartwell moved toward a bookshelf, pulling out what appeared to be a leather-bound journal. She opened it and began reading, her expression growing more troubled with each page. Whatever she was reading was clearly distressing her, because she sat down heavily in Diana's reading chair and put her hand to her forehead. Camilla's mind raced with questions. How long had Mrs. Hartwell been coming here? What was she looking for? And most importantly, what did this have to do with Charles's recent strange behavior? The note he had left with the key suggested he knew about whatever was happening in these rooms. Was this part of the matters from the past he had mentioned? The floorboard beneath Camilla's feet creaked softly, and Mrs. Hartwell's head snapped up. For a terrifying moment, their eyes met across the darkened doorway. The older woman's face went pale with shock, and she clutched the journal tightly to her chest. Your Majesty, Mrs. Hartwell whispered, her voice barely audible. I can explain. But before she could say another word, the sound of footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Heavy boots on marble floors, moving with purpose toward Diana's chambers. Camilla recognized the measured pace immediately. It was one of the castle's security guards making his rounds. Both women froze as the footsteps grew closer. If they were discovered together in Diana's sealed rooms, the scandal would be enormous. Camilla was the queen consort, and Mrs. Hartwell was supposedly a retired secretary who shouldn't even have access to the castle. The questions that would follow could expose whatever secret they had stumbled into. The guard's flashlight beam swept across the corridor outside, its light visible beneath the main door. Camilla could hear him checking door handles and testing locks, following his standard security protocol. In moments, he would reach Diana's door and discover that it was unlocked. Mrs. Hartwell quickly turned off her lamp, plunging the bedroom into darkness. She whispered urgently, There's another way out, through the service corridor. Follow me and stay quiet. But as they prepared to escape, Mrs. Hartwell accidentally knocked over a small silver picture frame from the nightstand. The crash seemed impossibly loud in the silence, echoing through both rooms. Outside in the corridor, the guard's footsteps stopped abruptly. Hello? Is someone there? Came a voice through the door. This is Castle Security. Please identify yourself. Camilla's heart hammered in her chest as she realized there was no escape now. The guard would investigate the noise, discover the unlocked door, and find both of them inside Diana's private sanctuary. Whatever secrets these rooms held, whatever Mrs. Hartwell had been protecting all these years, it was about to be exposed. The door handle turned slowly as the guard prepared to enter, his flashlight beam growing brighter as he approached. Camilla closed her eyes and prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. In her hand, she still clutched the silver key that Charles had left for her. The key that had opened not just a door, but what appeared to be a decades-old mystery. As the guard stepped into the sitting room, his flashlight illuminating the covered furniture and fresh flowers, Camilla realized that whatever happened next would force her to confront truths about Diana, about Charles, and about herself that she might not be prepared to handle. The beam of light swept across the room, searching for the source of the noise, moving inexorably toward the bedroom where two women stood frozen in the darkness. holding secrets that could reshape the royal family's carefully constructed narrative about love, loss, and the complicated legacy of the people's princess. Officer James Morrison had been patrolling Windsor Castle's corridors for 15 years, but he had never encountered anything like this. The crash from inside Diana's sealed chambers had been unmistakable, and protocol demanded investigation. As his flashlight beam swept through the sitting room, illuminating the fresh flowers and recently disturbed furniture, he knew he was looking at something far more serious than a simple break-in. "Your Majesty?" he called out, his voice echoing in the silence. He had recognized Queen Camilla's distinctive silhouette in the doorway to the bedroom, though protocol prevented him from acknowledging it directly until she chose to reveal herself. From the darkness of the bedroom came a soft rustling, followed by Camilla's voice, measured and calm despite the circumstances. "Officer Morrison, isn't it? Please, come in. We need to discuss what you've discovered here tonight." Morrison stepped carefully into the bedroom, his flashlight revealing two women standing near Diana's writing desk. Queen Camilla stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Beside her, an older woman clutched a leather journal tightly to her chest, her face pale with anxiety. "Ma'am," Morrison said, lowering his flashlight respectfully, "I was conducting routine security checks when I heard a disturbance. These chambers have been sealed since 1997. I'm required to report any unauthorized access immediately." Camilla moved closer to the guard, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she'd perfected during her years as Queen Consort. "What you've discovered tonight, Officer Morrison, is a situation that requires the utmost discretion. Before you make any reports, I believe you deserve to understand exactly what's been happening in these rooms." "Mrs. Hartwell stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "Your Majesty, perhaps it would be better if I explained. Officer Morrison, I am Elizabeth Hartwell, Princess Diana's former private secretary. I have been maintaining these chambers under direct orders from King Charles, though until tonight, Her Majesty was not aware of this arrangement." Morrison's training kicked in as he processed this information. Unauthorized access to royal chambers was a serious security breach, regardless of who was involved. But the presence of the Queen Consort complicated matters enormously. "Ma'am, with respect, I still need to follow protocol. These rooms were sealed by order of the late Queen Elizabeth. Any changes to that status require proper authorization." Camilla reached into her cardigan pocket and produced the silver key, holding it where Morrison could see it clearly. "This key was given to me by King Charles himself, along with instructions to discover what I would find here. What we've uncovered tonight is not a security breach, Officer Morrison, but the revelation of a truth that has been carefully protected for nearly 3 decades." Mrs. Hartwell opened the leather journal she had been holding, her fingers finding a specific page. "Officer Morrison, what I'm about to tell you will sound incredible, but every word is documented here in Princess Diana's own handwriting. The woman the world mourned in 1997, the Princess of Wales who died in Paris, was not the only Diana Spencer." The guard's flashlight wavered slightly as he processed these words. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting." Camilla moved to the writing desk and turned on a small reading lamp, casting a warm glow across the room. For the first time, Morrison could see the space clearly. It was not a preserved memorial, but a living area that had been carefully maintained. Personal items were arranged exactly as if someone had just stepped out for tea. "What Mrs. Hartwell is telling you," Camilla said slowly, "is that Diana Spencer had a twin sister, an identical twin who was separated from her at birth and raised in secret. The Diana who married Charles, who became the mother of William and Harry, who captured the world's heart, was indeed killed in Paris in 1997. But her sister, Sarah Diana Spencer, has been living here in these chambers ever since." Morrison's professional composure cracked slightly.
"Your Majesty, that's impossible."
"Such a secret couldn't be maintained for so long. Too many people would have to know." Mrs. Hartwell turned several pages in the journal, finding another passage. "Officer Morrison, Diana discovered the truth about her twin sister in 1995. 2 years before her death. Sarah had been raised by distant relatives in Scotland, told that her parents had died when she was young. She lived a quiet life as a librarian in Edinburgh, completely unaware of her true identity." She handed the journal to Morrison, pointing to a specific entry written in Diana's distinctive handwriting. "Read this passage, dated June 15, 1995. Diana wrote about receiving a letter from a woman who looked exactly like her, a woman seeking information about her biological family." Morrison read aloud, his voice growing quieter with each word. "The letter arrived today, and I nearly fainted when I saw the photograph enclosed with it. It was like looking in a mirror but seeing a stranger's life reflected back. Sarah Diana Spencer, born the same day as me, at the same hospital, but somehow lost in the confusion of our birth. She has been searching for her family for years, never knowing that her sister was one of the most famous women in the world.
Camilla watched Morrison's face as understanding began to dawn.
Diana arranged to meet her sister in secret. The resemblance was so complete that even Charles was shocked when Diana brought Sarah to the castle for the first time. They could have switched places, and no one would have known the difference. Mrs. Hartwell took back the journal and found another entry. Diana became obsessed with the idea of giving her sister the life she had never had. She began teaching Sarah everything about royal protocol, about the family history, about the responsibilities of being a princess. It became a kind of game for them, switching places for small events, seeing if anyone would notice. Morrison set down his flashlight and leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the implications. But if this is true, where is Sarah now? These chambers are maintained, but they're empty. Camilla and Mrs. Hartwell exchanged a meaningful look. That, Officer Morrison, is why we're here tonight. 3 weeks ago, Sarah disappeared from these rooms. She left no note, took none of her personal belongings, and hasn't contacted anyone since. King Charles has been quietly searching for her, but he's terrified that if word of her existence becomes public, it will create a constitutional crisis. The guard processed this information, his mind racing through the security implications. Your Majesty, if Princess Diana had a twin sister who has been living secretly in the castle for 27 years, and that sister has now disappeared, we're looking at a potential national security issue. Mrs. Hartwell nodded grimly. There's more, Officer Morrison. Sarah didn't just disappear randomly. She took something with her that Diana had hidden in these rooms for decades, something that could change the world's understanding of the royal family's history. She led them to a bookshelf in the corner of the bedroom, pulling out several books to reveal a hidden compartment behind them. The space was empty except for a few scraps of paper and what appeared to be pieces of a torn photograph.
Diana kept her most sensitive documents here. Mrs. Wine?
Hartwell explained, gathering the paper fragments. Letters, photographs, and personal records that she never wanted the official palace archives to contain. Sarah knew about this hiding place, and she took everything when she left. Camilla picked up one of the photograph fragments, studying it carefully. It showed part of a woman's face, but the features were unclear. What kind of documents are we talking about, Mrs. Hartwell? What could be so important that Sarah would risk exposure after hiding for nearly 3 decades? The former secretary hesitated, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. Your Majesty, Diana discovered information about the royal family's history that goes far beyond her own story. Information about other hidden relatives, about marriages that were never officially recorded, about children who were given up for adoption to protect the monarchy's reputation. Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. As a security officer, he was trained to handle threats to the royal family, but nothing had prepared him for this level of complexity. Ma'am, if this information exists and could potentially destabilize the monarchy, we need to involve MI5 immediately. Camilla shook her head firmly. Not yet, Officer Morrison. Charles specifically asked me to handle this quietly until we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. He believes that involving too many people at this stage could cause exactly the kind of crisis we're trying to prevent. Mrs. Rare. Hartwell returned to the journal, finding a passage near the end. There's something else you need to know. Diana's last entry in this journal, written just days before she left for Paris, suggests that she was planning to reveal Sarah's existence to the world. She had become convinced that the royal family's obsession with secrecy was more damaging than the truth could ever be. She read aloud from the final entry. I have decided that Sarah deserves to live in the light, not in the shadows. After I return from Paris, I will arrange for her to be introduced gradually to the public. The people who love Diana Spencer should know that there are 2 of us, and that love doesn't have to die with one person. Sarah will carry on what I started, but she will do it as herself, not as my hidden sister. The room fell silent as the implications of Diana's final decision settled over them. Morrison was the first to speak. So Princess Diana was planning to reveal her twin sister's existence just days before her death. That can't be a coincidence. Camilla felt a chill run down her spine. Mrs. Hartwell, are you suggesting that Diana's death and her plans to reveal Sarah were connected somehow? The older woman closed the journal carefully, her expression grave. Your Majesty, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm simply telling you what Diana wrote in her own words. But I will say this. Sarah disappeared exactly 27 years after Diana's death, on the anniversary. And she took with her not just Diana's hidden documents, but also a recording that Diana made explaining everything. Morrison straightened up, his security training taking over. A recording? What kind of recording? Mrs. Ideas? Hartwell reached into a jacket pocket and produced a small digital recorder, though it was clearly empty. Diana made a video confession explaining about Sarah, about the hidden documents, about everything she had discovered about the royal family's secrets. She hid the recording device in this room, and I've been protecting it all these years. But when Sarah left, she took the actual recording with her. Camilla sank into Diana's reading chair, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she was learning. So somewhere out there, Diana's twin sister is carrying a recording that could expose decades of royal family secrets. And we have no idea where she is or what she plans to do with that information. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside made all three of them freeze. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that were different from Morrison's security patrol. These footsteps belonged to someone who knew exactly where they were going. "Officer Morrison," came a voice from the sitting room. "Your radio check was overdue. Is everything secure in this sector?" Morrison recognized the voice of his supervisor, Sergeant Collins, and realized that his extended absence from his normal patrol route had been noticed. "Stay here," he whispered to Camilla and Mrs. Hartwell. "I'll handle this." But as he moved toward the sitting room, Camilla called out quietly, "Officer Morrison, before you go, there's one more thing you need to know." The footsteps we're hearing now, coming through Diana's chambers, those aren't the first unauthorized visitors we've had tonight. Someone else was here before us, someone who knew about Sarah's disappearance before any of us did. Morrison turned back, his expression serious. "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" Mrs. Hartwell pointed to the writing desk, where Morrison could now see that papers were scattered in a way that suggested someone had been searching through them hastily. "When I arrived tonight, I found evidence that someone else had been here recently. Someone was looking for the same information that Sarah took when she disappeared." The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. If multiple parties were now searching for Diana's twin sister and the secret she carried, the situation had escalated far beyond a simple family matter. This was becoming a race against time, with the stability of the monarchy potentially hanging in the balance. "Officer Morrison!" Sergeant Collins called out again, his voice closer now. "I'm coming in to check on you." As Morrison prepared to face his supervisor and somehow explain his presence in Diana's sealed chambers, he realized that this night had changed everything. The secret that had been carefully protected for nearly 3 decades was beginning to unravel, and he had become an unwilling guardian of a truth that could reshape British history. The sound of Sergeant Collins's footsteps grew closer, and Morrison knew that within moments he would have to make a choice that could define not just his career, but the future of the royal family itself. Sergeant Collins stepped into Diana's sitting room with the confident stride of a man who had been securing Windsor Castle for over 20 years. His flashlight beam immediately found Officer Morrison standing near the bedroom doorway, and his experienced eyes quickly catalogued the details that didn't belong. Fresh flowers, disturbed dust patterns, and the unmistakable signs that these supposedly sealed chambers had been regularly occupied. "Morrison, explain yourself," Collins said, his voice carrying the authority of his rank. "These rooms have been off-limits since 1997, and yet I find you conducting an unauthorized investigation." Before Morrison could respond, Queen Camilla emerged from the bedroom, her presence instantly transforming the dynamic of the confrontation. Collins immediately straightened to attention, his flashlight lowered respectfully. "Sergeant Collins," Camilla said, her voice carrying the practiced authority of royalty. "Officer Morrison was responding to my summons. What we've discovered tonight requires your immediate attention and absolute discretion." Collins had served the royal family long enough to recognize when a situation extended far beyond normal protocol. "Your Majesty, if there's been a security breach involving these chambers, I need to activate emergency procedures immediately. Mrs. Jefferson." Hartwell stepped forward, still clutching Diana's journal. "Sergeant Collins, before you take any official action, you need to understand what's really been happening here. My name is Elizabeth Hartwell, and I was Princess Diana's personal secretary. I've been maintaining these rooms under direct orders from King Charles for the past 27 years. Collins's expression shifted from confusion to sharp attention. "Ma'am, that's impossible. Princess Diana's staff was reassigned or retired immediately after her death. There are no active royal staff members associated with these chambers." Camilla moved to the writing desk and opened the drawer, revealing a stack of official documents bearing the royal seal. Sergeant Collins, what Mrs. Hartwell is telling you is the truth. Charles has been funding and overseeing a secret operation to maintain these chambers, but not as a memorial. They've been serving as a safe house for someone whose existence has been hidden from the world. She handed Collins one of the documents, a formal authorization bearing Charles's signature and dated just months after Diana's death. Princess Diana had an identical twin sister, Sarah Diana Spencer, who has been living secretly in these rooms since 1997. 3 weeks ago she disappeared, and we believe she may have been taken against her will. Collins read the document carefully, his professional composure masking the shock he felt. 20 years of Royal Security Service had taught him that the family's public image was carefully constructed, but nothing had prepared him for revelations of this magnitude. Your Majesty, if what you're telling me is true, this represents the most significant security failure in modern royal history. How could someone live in these chambers for decades without my knowledge? I oversee all security protocols for this section of the castle. Morrison stepped forward, finally finding his voice. Sergeant, Mrs. Hartwell has been using service corridors and staff entrances that predate our current security grid. She's been maintaining a schedule that avoids all regular patrol routes. It's actually quite brilliant from a covert operations perspective. Mrs. Hartwell opened Diana's journal to a detailed floor plan that showed the castle's hidden passages, many of which were known only to long-term staff members. Sergeant Collins, Diana, and I mapped out these routes during her years here. She understood that if her sister ever needed to live secretly in the castle, it would require avoiding all official security protocols. Collins studied the floor plan, recognizing passages that he had never fully explored during his tenure. This level of planning suggests that Princess Diana anticipated the need for this arrangement. Was she expecting some kind of threat? Camilla exchanged a meaningful glance with Mrs. Hartwell before answering. Diana believed that Sarah's existence would be used against the royal family if it ever became public knowledge. She was convinced that certain parties would exploit the situation to destabilize the monarchy, so she created this safe house as protection. The sergeant set down his flashlight and pulled out his secure radio, but Camilla quickly placed her hand over it. Sergeant Collins, before you report this to your superiors, you need to know that Sarah didn't just disappear. She was taken by people who knew exactly where to find her and exactly what she was protecting. Mrs. Hartwell led them to the hidden compartment behind the bookshelf, pointing to the empty space where Diana's secret documents had been stored. Sarah was the guardian of information that could expose not just her own existence, but decades of royal family secrets. When she disappeared, all of that information disappeared with her. Collins examined the hiding place, noting the professional way it had been constructed and concealed. What kind of information are we talking about, Mrs. Hartwell? What could be significant enough to justify this level of secrecy?
The former secretary hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal.
Sergeant Collins, Diana discovered that Sarah wasn't the only hidden relative in the royal family's recent history. There were others, children who were separated from their families to protect the monarchy's public image. Diana had been documenting these cases for years. She opened the journal to a section filled with genealogical charts and family trees that extended far beyond the official royal lineage. Princess Diana was building a case that the royal family's obsession with controlling their public narrative had created dozens of hidden victims over the past century. People who were denied their rightful place in history because their existence was inconvenient. Morrison studied the charts, noting names and dates that had been carefully researched and documented. Diana was essentially conducting an investigation into her own family's secret history. That's incredibly dangerous territory for a royal family member. Camilla nodded grimly. Diana believed that the truth was more important than protecting the monarchy's reputation. In her final months, she was planning to make all of this information public, starting with revealing Sarah's existence. Collins felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. As head of security for this section of the castle, he was responsible for protecting not just the physical safety of the royal family, but also their institutional security. Your Majesty, if this information exists and has now fallen into unauthorized hands, we're looking at a potential national security crisis. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside made them all turn toward the main door. But these weren't the measured steps of a security patrol. These footsteps were quick, purposeful, and moving with the confidence of someone who knew they had every right to be there. That will be Prince William, Camilla said quietly, checking her watch. I sent him a message 30 minutes ago asking him to meet me here. It's time he learned the truth about what his mother was protecting. Collins and Morrison exchanged glances, both realizing that the situation was about to become even more complex. The presence of the heir to the throne would elevate this matter to the highest levels of royal protocol, but it would also mean that more people were becoming involved in what was supposed to be a secret investigation. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, followed by 3 sharp knocks, a signal that Camilla recognized as William's private code. She walked to the door and opened it herself, revealing Prince William dressed in casual clothes, but with an expression of deep concern. "Camilla," William said as he entered, his eyes immediately taking in the scene, the security officers, the older woman with the journal, and the obvious signs that these chambers had been regularly occupied. "Your message said there was something about my mother that I needed to know immediately. What's going on here?" Camilla closed the door behind him and gestured toward the sitting room where they could all gather. "William, what I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about Diana, about your family, and about the secrets that have been kept from you for your entire life." William's expression hardened as he processed the gravity in her voice. "Camilla, if this is about my mother's private life or her relationship with my father, I'm not sure I want to hear it. Some things are better left buried." Mrs. L. Hartwell stepped forward, still holding Diana's journal. "Your Royal Highness, this isn't about your mother's marriage or her personal relationships. This is about a sister you never knew you had, a woman who has been living secretly in these chambers since your mother's death." The color drained from William's face as he struggled to process these words. "What are you talking about? My mother was an only child. She had no siblings." Camilla moved closer to him, her voice gentle but firm.
William, your mother had an identical twin sister named Sarah Diana Spencer.
She was separated from your mother at birth and raised by distant relatives in Scotland. Your mother discovered her existence in 1995 and brought her here to live secretly in these chambers. William looked around the room with new eyes, noting the personal touches and lived-in quality that he had initially dismissed. "You're telling me that someone has been living in my mother's rooms for 27 years and no one thought to inform me?" Morrison stepped forward respectfully. "Your Royal Highness, the secrecy was maintained on direct orders from King Charles. Hartwell has been serving as your aunt's caretaker and guardian, protecting both her safety and the information she was keeping safe." The word aunt hit William like a physical blow. The idea that he had an aunt, a woman who shared his mother's face and potentially her mannerisms, who had been living just corridors away from his own quarters, was almost impossible to process. "Where is she now?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "If she's been here all this time, where is my mother's sister?" Mrs. Hartwell opened the journal to one of the final entries. "Your Royal Highness, 3 weeks ago, Sarah disappeared from these chambers. She left no note, but she took with her documents and recordings that your mother had hidden here for decades. We believe she may have been taken by people who want to use that information against the royal family." William sank into one of Diana's chairs, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was learning. "My father knew about this. He's known about my mother's twin sister for nearly 30 years, and he never told me. Even after I became heir to the throne, even after I started a family of my own, he kept this secret from me." Camilla placed a protective hand on his shoulder. "William Charles was trying to protect both you and Sarah. He believed that if knowledge of her existence became public, it would create exactly the kind of crisis we're facing now." Collins cleared his throat respectfully. "Your Royal Highness, with your permission, I need to escalate this matter to MI5 immediately." If the helicopters touched down on the castle's east lawn with military precision, their rotors still spinning as armed figures in tactical gear emerged from the aircraft. Through the emergency lighting, William could see that these weren't ordinary security forces. Their equipment and coordination suggested special operations training, and their presence at Windsor Castle without authorization meant that the situation had escalated far beyond a family secret. Morrison worked frantically with the satellite phone, trying to establish contact with King Charles. "Your Royal Highness, the main communication lines have been jammed. Someone is using sophisticated electronic warfare equipment to isolate us from outside support." Collins positioned himself at the main door, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, we need to move to a more secure location immediately. These chambers are too exposed, and we have no backup route if they breach the main entrance." Mrs. Hartwell quickly gathered the remaining documents from Diana's safe, stuffing them into a canvas bag, along with the satellite communication equipment. "There's a passage behind the bedroom fireplace that leads directly to the royal family's private quarters. Diana showed it to me years ago as an emergency escape route." William tore open the envelope his mother had left for him, scanning the handwritten letter quickly in the red emergency lighting. His expression grew more troubled with each line he read. "What does it say?" Camilla asked, noting the shock on his face. William looked up from the letter, his voice barely controlled. My mother writes that Sarah isn't just her twin sister, she's also the biological mother of someone we all know. Someone who has been part of our lives for years without any of us knowing the truth about their parentage. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Mrs. Hartwell stopped gathering documents and stared at William. Your Royal Highness, Diana never told me about any child. Sarah was supposed to be living here alone. William continued reading from the letter. According to this, Sarah had a daughter in 1982, when she was 21 and living in Scotland. The child was adopted, but Diana tracked down the adoption records and discovered that the daughter had grown up to become someone with direct access to the royal family. Morrison paused in his work with the radio equipment. Sir, are you saying that someone currently in the royal household is actually Sarah's daughter and therefore Diana's biological niece? The sound of tactical boots echoing through the corridors outside made them all freeze. The unknown forces had entered the castle and were moving systematically through the east wing, checking each room as they advanced toward Diana's chambers. Collins spoke in an urgent whisper. We need to use that escape route now. These aren't royal protection officers, and they're not following standard security protocols. Someone has sent a private military team to secure these chambers and everyone in them. Mrs. Hartwell moved to the bedroom fireplace and began manipulating what appeared to be decorative stones around the mantelpiece. After a moment, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage lined with modern lighting and communication cables. Diana had this passage updated with current technology, she explained as she led them into the hidden corridor. She wanted to ensure that if anyone ever tried to silence her or Sarah, there would always be a way to get information to the outside world. As they moved through the passage, William continued reading from his mother's letter by flashlight. She writes that Sarah's daughter was placed with a family that had close connections to the royal household. The adoption was arranged specifically to ensure the child would grow up with access to palace life, but without anyone knowing her true heritage. Camilla felt a growing sense of dread. William, who is it? Who in our household is actually Sarah's daughter? William stopped walking and looked directly at her. According to my mother's letter, it's Sophie Wessex. Edward's wife has been Sarah's daughter all along, which means she's actually Diana's niece and my biological cousin. The implications hit them all simultaneously. Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, had been part of the royal family for over 2 decades. She had access to the highest levels of royal information, participated in state functions, and was trusted with the most sensitive family matters. If she was actually Sarah's daughter, and if she knew the truth about her parentage, she could have been working from within to expose the family's secrets. Morrison connected the dots quickly. Your Royal Highness, if the Countess of Wessex knows about her biological mother and has been searching for her, that could explain how hostile forces knew exactly where to find Sarah and what information she was protecting. The sound of explosions echoed through the castle structure, suggesting that the tactical team was using breaching charges to access secured areas. The passage they were moving through shook slightly with each detonation, and dust began falling from the ceiling. Collins urged them forward more quickly. We need to reach the secure communications center in the royal quarters before they cut off all our escape routes. Your Royal Highness, once we're in contact with your father, he needs to know immediately that the Countess of Wessex might be compromised. Mrs. Hartwell checked her watch as they navigated a junction in the passage. There's something else you need to know about Sophie. 3 weeks ago, on the day Sarah disappeared, the Countess made an unscheduled private visit to Scotland. She told the royal staff it was for personal family business, but she never specified what kind of business. William felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with horrifying clarity. Sophie discovered the truth about her biological mother and went to Scotland to investigate her own background. But instead of finding answers about her adoption, she found people who were willing to pay enormous amounts of money for information about the royal family's hidden secrets. They reached another junction where the passage branched in multiple directions. Mrs. Hartwell consulted a small map that she pulled from her jacket pocket, marking their current position and the route to the secure communications center. There's a problem, she said quietly. To reach the royal quarters, we have to pass through a section of the castle that's currently occupied by the tactical team. Diana's escape route was designed to avoid normal security patrols, not a full-scale military operation. Morrison checked his service weapon and activated his emergency radio beacon. Mrs. Hartwell, are there any alternative routes that could get us to a position where we can call for legitimate backup? The explosions were getting closer now, and they could hear voices echoing through the main corridors of the castle. The tactical team was conducting a systematic search, and it was only a matter of time before they discovered the hidden passage system. Camilla grabbed William's arm. We need to make a decision right now. Do we try to escape and get this information to your father, or do we make a stand here and try to protect what your mother left for us? William looked at the documents Mrs. Hartwell was carrying, then at his mother's letter still in his hand. There's a third option. My mother's letter includes specific instructions for what to do if the family secrets were ever threatened with exposure. He turned to a specific page in the letter, reading aloud in the dim light of the passage. Diana writes that there's a fail-safe mechanism built into the castle's communication systems. If activated, it would simultaneously broadcast all of her research to every major news organization in the world, making it impossible for anyone to suppress the information. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes widened. Your mother never told me about any broadcast system. Are you sure that's what the letter says? William showed her the relevant passage. She writes that she worked with loyal palace technicians to install hidden transmitters throughout the castle. The system was designed to activate automatically if anyone tried to use violence to suppress her investigation. The sound of tactical teams moving through nearby corridors was getting louder. Morrison estimated that they had perhaps 10 minutes before their position would be discovered. Collins made the decision for all of them. Your Royal Highness, if such a system exists, we need to try to activate it immediately. The alternative is that Sarah remains missing, her daughter potentially becomes a security threat to the crown, and all of Princess Diana's research disappears forever. William folded his mother's letter carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. The activation point is in the castle's main computer center, but getting there means going through the areas where the tactical team is currently operating. Mrs. Hartwell pulled out the satellite phone and began working with its encryption settings. There might be another way. If Diana's broadcast system was integrated with the castle's communication infrastructure, we might be able to access it remotely using this secure phone. As she worked with the technical settings, the lights in the passage suddenly came back on, suggesting that the tactical team had restored power to the castle. But the return of normal lighting also meant that any electronic surveillance systems would now be operational, potentially exposing their location. Morrison checked his watch and made a quick calculation. Ma'am, Your Royal Highness, King Charles was supposed to arrive 30 minutes ago. The fact that he hasn't appeared suggests that he's either been detained or that the situation outside the castle is more complex than we realized. The satellite phone in Mrs. Liphu. Hartwell's hand suddenly activated, displaying an incoming message in encrypted text. As she read it, her expression grew increasingly alarmed. It's from Sarah, she announced quietly. She's alive, but she's being held by people who want to trade her safety for all of Diana's research documents. They're giving us 1 hour to deliver everything, or they'll release information that could destroy the monarchy entirely. William felt the weight of impossible choices settling on his shoulders. His aunt was in danger, his cousin might be a security threat, and his mother's legacy was about to become either the salvation or the destruction of everything his family had worked to protect. The sound of approaching footsteps meant that their time for decisions was running out, and whatever choice they made in the next few minutes would determine not just their own fate, but the future of the British royal family itself. The encrypted message on the satellite phone continued scrolling as Mrs. Hartwell read Sarah's desperate communication aloud. She says she's being held in a location within 20 miles of Windsor Castle. The people who took her claim to represent a consortium of European media organizations and foreign intelligence services who want to use Diana's research to expose what they call the monarchy's century of deception. William felt his world shifting beneath him as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. This wasn't just about hidden royal relatives anymore. This was about international forces using his family's secrets as weapons in a larger political game. There's more, Mrs. Hartwell continued reading. Sarah says the consortium has been planning this operation for years. They've been placing people inside royal households across Europe, collecting information about hidden scandals and suppressed family histories. Diana's research was just the most comprehensive collection they'd discovered. Morrison checked his tactical radio, which was now picking up communications from the teams moving through the castle. Your Royal Highness, they're not just searching for us, they're looking for something specific. They keep mentioning a primary data cache that they believe is hidden in these chambers. Collins realized what this meant. Diana didn't just document the royal family's hidden history. She collected similar information about other European monarchies. That's why international intelligence services are involved. This information could destabilize royal families across the continent. The footsteps in the corridors were getting closer, and the tactical teams were clearly following some kind of systematic search pattern. Mrs. Hartwell quickly accessed another function on the satellite phone, bringing up what appeared to be a building schematic of Windsor Castle. "Your mother was more prepared than any of us realized," she told William. "This phone has access to the castle's complete security infrastructure. We can see exactly where the tactical teams are positioned and how they're moving through the building." On the phone screen, red dots indicated the positions of at least 15 hostile operatives spread throughout the East Wing. But there were also green dots showing the locations of legitimate palace security forces who were apparently being held in secure areas, unable to respond to the crisis. Camilla studied the display. "They've neutralized our regular security and isolated this entire section of the castle. William, this is a full-scale operation designed to extract specific information from Diana's research." William made a decision that would define his reign before it even began. "Mrs. Hartwell, can you use that phone to contact my father directly? Not through palace communications, but through his personal security detail?" She worked with the encrypted settings for several moments before nodding. "I'm getting a secure connection to King Charles's protective detail. They're currently in a secure location at Highgrove, and they report that the king has been under what they call protective isolation for the past 2 hours. The implication was clear. Charles had been warned about the operation against Windsor Castle and had been moved to safety before it began, but this also meant that he might have more information about what was really happening. Morrison was monitoring the tactical team's radio communications through his equipment. "Your Royal Highness, they're talking about a deadline. They need to complete their mission and extract from the castle within the next 30 minutes, or they'll face unacceptable political exposure." Mrs. Hartwell successfully connected the secure call to Charles's location. After a moment, the king's voice came through the encrypted channel, tense but controlled. "William, are you safe? We've been monitoring the situation and we know about the people who took Sarah. This goes far beyond what we initially thought we were dealing with." William spoke directly into the satellite phone. "Father, we've discovered that Sophie Wessex is actually Sarah's daughter, and she may have provided information that led to this attack. We also have evidence that Diana was investigating hidden royal relatives across multiple European monarchies." There was a long pause before Charles responded. "William, I need you to listen very carefully. Sophie came to me 2 weeks ago with information about her biological mother. She didn't betray Sarah, she was trying to protect her. The people who took Sarah have been monitoring our family for years, and they used Sophie's emotional connection to her mother to track down Sarah's location. This revelation changed everything. Sophie wasn't a security threat. She was another victim of the same forces that were now holding her biological mother hostage." Collins interrupted urgently. "Your Royal Highness, the tactical teams have found the entrance to this passage system. We have perhaps 5 minutes before they reach our position." Charles's voice came through the phone again. "William, there's an emergency protocol that your mother built into the castle's systems. If you can reach the main communication center, you can activate a complete data transmission that will send all of Diana's research simultaneously to intelligence services in allied nations. It will expose the consortium that's trying to exploit our secrets." Mrs. Hartwell pulled up the castle schematics again. "The communication center is 3 levels down from our current position, but to get there, we'd have to go through areas that are currently occupied by hostile forces." Morrison studied the display and identified a possible route. "There's a service elevator system that connects this level directly to the communication center. It's not shown on the main building plans, which means the tactical team might not know about it." William made the decision. "We're going to split up. Camilla, I need you and Collins to try to reach the communication center and activate my mother's emergency protocol. Mrs. Hartwell, Morrison, and I will create a distraction that draws the tactical teams away from the communication center." Camilla protested immediately. "William, I'm not leaving you to face these people alone. We should stay together and find another way." But William was already moving toward the junction where the passage branched toward the service elevators. "Camilla, if we don't activate that protocol, Sarah dies. Sophie becomes a permanent security risk, and my mother's investigation dies with her. This is bigger than any of our personal safety." Mrs. Hartwell handed Camilla a copy of Diana's journal and the activation codes that Charles had provided over the secure phone. "Your Majesty, the communication center has a direct connection to MI6 and intelligence services in 12 allied nations. Once you activate the protocol, there's no stopping what happens next." Collins checked his weapon and prepared to escort Camilla to the service elevator. "Your Royal Highness, how long do we need to keep the tactical teams distracted?" William consulted his mother's letter one final time. "The data transmission will take approximately 15 minutes to complete once it's activated. After that, the information will be in the hands of people who can use it to expose the consortium and rescue Sarah." The sound of cutting tools echoed through the passage as the tactical team began breaching the hidden entrance they had discovered. The operation was entering its final phase, and within moments, the secret that had been protected for nearly 3 decades would either be preserved or destroyed forever. Morrison activated his emergency beacon, which would draw the tactical teams toward their position and away from the communication center. Your Royal Highness, Your Majesty, whatever happens in the next few minutes, you need to know that Princess Diana would be proud of the choices you're making tonight. As Camilla and Collins disappeared toward the service elevator, William reflected on the irony that his mother's greatest secret was about to become her most public legacy. The hidden passages she had built to protect her sister would now be used to expose the truth about royal families across Europe. The cutting sound stopped, and William could hear tactical teams moving into the passage system. In less than an hour, the world would know about Sarah Diana Spencer, about Sophie's true parentage, and about decades of royal family secrets that had been carefully hidden from public view. But they would also know about the international consortium that had tried to use those secrets as weapons, and about the brave people who had risked everything to ensure that the truth served justice rather than exploitation. William gripped his mother's letter tightly as he prepared to face the people who had turned Diana's investigation into a battlefield. The missing key that had started this night's revelations had unlocked far more than just a door. It had opened a pathway to a future where royal families could no longer hide behind centuries of carefully constructed secrecy. As the first tactical operative appeared at the end of the passage, William smiled grimly and activated the distraction protocol that would give Camilla and Collins the time they needed to complete Diana's final mission. The truth, as his mother had always believed, would indeed set them all free, but first, it would demand a price that none of them could have imagined when this night began. The sound of alarms echoing throughout Windsor Castle announced that Princess Diana's emergency protocol had been successfully activated, and that the most closely guarded secrets in royal history were about to become headlines around the world. Sarah Diana Spencer would finally step out of the shadows. Sophie would learn the truth about her heritage, and the monarchy would discover whether transparency could make them stronger than secrecy ever had. The missing key had unlocked not just Diana's chambers, but a future where the royal family's greatest strength would come from acknowledging their hidden humanity, rather than pretending to be perfect symbols. As tactical teams surrounded his position, William realized that his mother's greatest gift to the monarchy wasn't the secret she had kept, but the courage she had shown in deciding that some truths were too important to remain buried forever.